So tonight I have many things I could talk to you about. I have many things that I prepared, but usually when I travel, there's always a question that comes back again and again. And last year was tetanus. A lot of people wanted to know about tetanus because polio and tetanus happen to be two diseases that people believe, even if they don't believe in all vaccines, that they believe that they may want to still vaccinate for these, as I did. Now, also, I want you to know that...
I just want to make sure that everyone knows what tetanus is. It's the stelkramp, yes.
Okay.
The stelkramp, yeah.
Okay. I used to believe in vaccines. I used to give vaccines, okay? So it's not like I always had this, this problem against the vaccines. I was vaccinated before medical school. I was vaccinated as a child, but I was not vaccinated to the degree that babies are vaccinated today. And there were nowhere near as many vaccines then. So in my research, in the beginning of my research, I thought, well, there still must be some vaccines that I would take. But now there are no vaccines that I would take, okay? That's just for me. I don't care if I'm going to Sri Lanka or Africa. There's no vaccine that I would take after doing my research because I'm willing to accept responsibility for the outcome of whether I do vaccinate or whether I don't vaccinate. And because I have researched how to keep myself healthy, how to keep my immune system working, even if I'm faced with Ebola virus, okay? So I don't have any fear of dying from infection because I've done my research, and you are all capable of doing that. In fact, most parents have developed a level of understanding of the immune system and health and vaccination far above what their doctors know. And that's my belief, that is why the health authorities tell doctors not to talk to you, because they know that most doctors will lose the argument unless they have taken the time to really understand. And most doctors don't have the time to take that I have, and they don't have the time to sit and research both sides. So they have to, by default, listen to the authorities and do as they're told. So I'm not saying doctors are bad people. I'm not saying they're evil. I'm saying that doctors are not informed and they're too busy to get informed. So it's your job to get informed because you are the best line of defense for your children, okay? So if you'd like, I can start by a tetanus presentation, and we can do that during the first hour. And then I have more information on history, on influenza, on vitamin C, infant immunity. So we can talk about other topics. And then the last hour, maybe we just do question and answer. Does that sound good? Okay. Before I get into that, I just want to show you a few interesting things. And this is from a little magazine that is very highly read in America. It's very popular, called Reader's Digest. And Kathleen Sebelius is our Secretary of Health and Human Services, a very high-level position in government. And she said that there are groups out there, like me, who say that vaccines are responsible for problems. And they say that we have reached out to the media to try to get the media not to give me my view or equal weight, because she says the science has already shown the safety and effectiveness of vaccination, so my voice should not be heard. I couldn't disagree with that more, because the more science I know, the more indignant and upset I get, because I know that the science shows major problems with the theory of vaccination and with the practice of vaccination. This is a PowerPoint presentation that comes from Mayo Clinic. This is a very prestigious institution in USA, and this is one of our leading vaccine promoters in USA. And he made a PowerPoint presentation to give to all doctors to help them talk to people who don't want to vaccinate. And I just took out a couple of slides to show you. It was a very long presentation, but he basically is coaching these doctors how to deal with you. Here's one of the major problems is that this fellow, and this is common, okay, the pro-vaccine world is rife with conflict of interest. These doctors that are promoting vaccines by and large, have some sort of interest in the vaccine being taken up by the public. So here's just a little list of his conflict of interest. There are numerous conflict of interest of this gentleman, and they're listed in many of his papers because they have to list them. They say, don't plan on giving you any printed information. Don't plan on emailing you any links to information. Does that seem a little strange? They're saying not to give you the information. They said, instead, read and remember. Well, that's not happening, I can guarantee you that. This, I think, is the worst, most egregious statement here, which is he's telling them to persuade you rather than inform you. Okay, so you know now. This was a PowerPoint presentation to doctors. This here is from Dr. Lance Rodewald from the Division of Immunization Services, Center for Disease Control. He was quoted in the New York Times in 2004, and you can read right there, frightening parents about the consequences of failing to vaccinate their children will most likely be part of the campaign. For the task, meningococcal meningitis is ideal. And frightening you is key to getting you to do what they want you to do. And let me just show you something that happened in New Zealand. Speaking of fear, we had a vaccine there called meningococcal B, and this was the informed consent. Okay, right. Give your consent. People holding pen. On the other side had a baby that was dying from some sort of hemorrhagic disease. But one of the authorities said that protection is expected to last for a few years, but the exact period is unknown. So many of these babies were given 3 and 4 vaccines that had huge amounts of aluminium in them. And later on, we found out that there were even more problems with this vaccine, that they used a lot of fear to get the public to take up. In 4 years, 109 cases of the epidemic that they were trying to cover were reported, and they were all people who were vaccinated. 60 were partially vaccinated and 49 were fully vaccinated. Parents were lied to about this vaccine, and in these studies that showed how long the vaccine lasted, they found that the antibody that was made went away very rapidly, somewhere between 2 and 7 months after all 3 of those doses. Not only that, but they found that you could be vaccinated for this. Anyone who was vaccinated for this still carried the bacteria. It didn't get rid of the bacteria, okay? And so these doctors, here's another New Zealand Herald saying that it provided only short-term protection, and this doctor said parents should have been told more clearly about this. So this is the problem with being scared into doing something before you understand what's happening. This was an expensive lesson for New Zealand. Nowhere in the consent did it mention that immunity dropped below protective levels within 2 months. And the failure to inform parents at the time was disgraceful, according to writings in public in the New Zealand Herald. $200 million were put into this campaign. And after that, officials were determined to conceal anything that might cause unease, and everybody was just hush-hush about it. Well, I'd like to show you something else, and that is the data showed from 2006, 2007, 2008, there were 12 deaths from this particular bacteria, and every one of them was in a vaccinated child. Not a single one was in an unvaccinated child. Okay? So here we have the meningitis was coming down. Here's where they started vaccinating, and here we see what the death rate did after they began to vaccinate. This is what can happen when a population is frightened with pictures like this, thinking of your baby being that baby. We saw this happen in the 1950s with polio, and it will continue to happen. I guarantee you we will soon be seeing people dying of Ebola and pictures of them, whether it's Ebola or not, and we will be offered this vaccine. So we have to be very cautious when fear is used in a campaign, because the result is that we stop thinking. So we must always continue to think even in the presence of fear. Keep our minds open, read as much as you can, and continued to stay healthy, which is always the key to decreasing disease rates. And when I say to stay healthy, I mean nutritionally. I mean paying attention to what we're eating, paying attention that we have the right nutrients, that we're not eating lots of food that has no nutrient value, that we're not scared all the time, because fear, guess what fear does? It raises your cortisol levels and makes your immune system not function properly.